Hello, my name is Sean from the Avaya Serviceability Engineering team, and this video is about using the VMEnable tool for modular messaging systems. In this session, we will learn how to use VMEnable to bulk enable modular messaging for Exchange backend users. We will open and navigate through the instructions file and execute the FADB query tool to create a user list. This user list will then be edited so that it is prepared for use by VMEnable, and we will execute VMEnable against the list to enable our users. VMEnable is a command line bulk enablement tool for modular messaging with Exchange backend and cannot be used on the MSS backend. It is generally used to provision users when a system is first installed, but it can also be used to enable batches of users when new offices or locations are onboarded to a centralized modular messaging system. You can also use the tool to move users from one voicemail domain to another in the event the voicemail domain is corrupted or needs to be rebuilt. The tool comes with all modular messaging systems and is located under /Avaya support /tools /VMEnable. The tool itself is a single exe file, and the CHM file in this folder is the compiled HTML instructions to use the tool. Let's start by opening this file and navigating through the instructions. There are about a half dozen detailed instruction pages that take you through the entire process of using VMEnable. The home page gives you links to specific instructions on running FADB query, the resulting file's field descriptions, and the command line parameters for running the VMEnable tool, and example values for these. It also includes examples and some troubleshooting. So let's go through the complete process. First, we will run the FADB query tool with option 3 and create a file called users.csv. We will need to work this file up in Excel, so we will open it in Notepad, select all, copy, and paste the data into a file on our local workstation where we have Excel installed. There can be several issues when using Excel to work up the data, and we will cover a few of these. The first field is derived from the AD attribute Legacy Exchange DN, and this can have spaces. Therefore, you must enclose this piece of data in double quotes. The last column in the file is ignore row, and if this is set to 1, the row will not be processed by VMEnable when the tool is executed. FADB query sets this column to 1 for every record, so you will typically change this entire column from 1 to 0. You can use this tool to move users from one voicemail domain to another, for instance, if the VMD is accidentally deleted or needs to be rebuilt. You must be very careful when populating the VMD ID column with the new VMD ID. If you only paste the VMD ID into the first row and pull this value down to all the other records, it will usually increment this value, and it's easy for this to go unnoticed. The trick here is to paste the value into 3 consecutive rows and then pull the data down to populate the other rows with the same VMD ID. Another issue is that for an Exchange backend, a class of service value of 0 is invalid, but it is valid for the MSS backend. FADB query will commonly set the default class of service, if it hasn't been changed, to 0, and you may want to change column L to 1 if there are zeros here. The newer version of VMEnable has a built-in recovery for this issue, where if the CSV file has zeros for the class of service, it will automatically default these records to a class of service of 1. So for the purpose of this training, we will leave all of the records with a class of service of 0 so that we can see what is logged by the tool when we run VMEnable. Here is our users.csv file with only the users we will enable listed. and we have already populated the VMD ID. We also need to populate the numeric address, extension number, mailbox number, and mailbox password. This information would normally come from a PBX station report, but for the demonstration we will just add an incrementing number range, and we will use this as the mailbox password as well. We also need to set column H to 1. This field controls the Enable Modular Messaging checkbox on the Modular Messaging tab. It is also very important to open the final worked up file using Notepad, especially when using multiple tools like Excel and Notepad++, and look for repeated double quotes around the first field, as this will create an error. Repeated double quotes may display as a single quote in Excel or Notepad++. The easiest way I found to correct this is with a simple find and replace all against the whole file. You will almost always want to work up at least 2 CSV files when using VMEnable. If there are 500 or less users, you can use one file with all of the users, but then make a copy and remove all but one user to do a test run. You should also remove this user from the file that has all the other users. If there are more than 500 users, create several CSV files so that you are not enabling more than 500 at a time. We don't want to overload the customer's domain controllers with updates and resulting replication tasks. Here are the users that we will bulk enable, and if we check the Modular Messaging tab, we see that they are not enabled. We will run VMEnable against the first CSV file that only has one user, and then check the AD account to make sure the correct information is populated. Viewing the results of the VMEnable command, and we also see what is logged when an invalid class of service of 0 is used. The data from the CSV file is pushed immediately to the domain controller, but in larger environments, because of replication schedules and which domain controller your Active Directory users and computers is connected to, the information on the Modular Messaging tab may take some time to populate. Once the test user appears to be enabled for Modular Messaging, we should log into the mailbox, testing the password, and record the name prompt and greetings so that we can leave and retrieve test messages. Once this all tests properly, we can run VMEnable against the larger CSV file to enable the balance of our users. Be sure to have something to take notes on as the user records are processed. If there are any failures, note the name and extension so that you can go back and manually enable these users or investigate why an error was logged. It may be that the user doesn't have an Exchange mailbox, or there may be some corruption. Thank you for your time today. We welcome questions, comments, and feedback at mentor@avaya.com or on Twitter @AvayaMentor. Thank you for choosing Avaya.